Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of January 1968. Welcome back to Steve, and welcome back to our special guest, Jeff Ryan, who is, once again, if you are listening to these episodes in the wrong order, you don't know who Jeff is yet. So let's go ahead and reintroduce him again. He is the author of Super Mario, How Nintendo Conquered America, A Mouse Divided, How Iwerks Became Forgotten, and Walt Disney Became Uncle Walt, Your Worshipfulness, Princess Leia starring Carrie Fisher, and the main reason we're having him on, he is the official biographer of John Romita and John Romita Jr. in a book called Father and Son Issues, The Secret History of Spider-Man. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Bird Boys.
Yes, indeed. So, is there anything else we want to talk about generally before we jump back into the second half of the books from January 1968?
Well, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I just was at the Charlotte comic convention called Heroes Con this past weekend, Charlotte, North Carolina. It had a good show. I was on a podcasting panel along with some other great comics podcasters, and possibly lined up some future guests.
Yes, some very exciting possible future guests who you may be hearing from at some point in the future. So we will see if they actually, it's anybody can promise anything at a con.
Yes.
you can be like, hey, let's be back in touch sometime, and we'll see how many of those people actually become future guests.
Right. Well, I figure it's particularly hopeful when they actually write down their email address for you. So
yes,
that I got that for two of them. So we will see. But then another couple seem a little more sure. Anyway, so yeah, Heroes Con, always a great show. One of possibly the best pure comic book convention still out there that hasn't been colonized by Hollywood or other genres other than comics.
Yep. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I should come out and join you there at some point. We talked about doing it this year, but there's just too much going on. But I'd love to do that podcasting panel with you sometime. But okay, let's go ahead and jump back into the books of January 1968 and finish up tonight's recording. Let's go ahead and do Fantastic Four, When Fall the Mighty. I forget, is this me or you, Steve?
I think this is me.
Okay.
All right.
So you get to say a very fun word in the credits box. Looking forward to this.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so When Fall the Mighty. It's time for another standing ovation for Smilin' Stan Lee and Jolly Jack Kirby, who have given us another tintinabulating thriller, superbly supported by Joe Sinnott inker, Artie Simek letterer. Yes, I did go back and reread that several times to make sure I knew how to pronounce that before we began recording.
But before we jump into the issue, let's talk about the cover a little bit. So you've got the Fantastic Four. Johnny is unconscious, even on the cover, in his civvies, not in his Fantastic Four costume. I'm continually baffled as to why he is always in his civvies these days. But we've got Penn passed out, Johnny passed out, still aflame, Reed passed out, Sue giving us a Brokeback pose, Sue giving us the pose of someone who is showing us both her posterior and her front at the same time, which is something that comics artists are accused of many times of doing these days. And then Sue is being attacked by the most generic-looking android in the history of Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby, we know, knows how to draw some very exciting-looking androids, and this is the most unexciting, generic android Jack Kirby has ever drawn. I have been complaining throughout this storyline about Kirby's plotting, his penciling, and especially his covers, and I think this cover is just atrocious.
Yeah, and actually it looks like one of the legs of his shorty shorts is about 3 times as long as the other leg.
Yes.
There. Yeah, it's not the best.
His head just looks like a vegetable. It's like he was eating edamame because someone said it was cool, and he looked at it and goes, "Oh, that's good enough."
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. There seems to be 2 little bulbous things coming down right around his chin, which look a little suspect. Yeah, it's not the best cover. I will give you that. So the Fantastic Four are fighting. I guess these are all androids, aren't they? Yes, they're fighting some androids that are backing up the Mad Thinker. Johnny rushes forward, as he often does, to try to clear the way. and the Mad Thinker ends up opening up some kind of water spigot that is going to fill up this chamber with water. And of course, he is fire, so water can put him out. We'll come back to that in a moment. The Thing is wandering the city in a trench coat, even though there are newspapers on every corner saying, Thing runs amok, citywide dragnet.
He must have a trench coat guy. Like, he goes through so many of them a week. Like, you can make a good living just selling trench coats to the Thing.
Yes. Although it seems like, like many characters, they seem to just find them lying around. It's like there's a leave a trench coat, take a trench coat sort of thing going on. I'm not sure. So anyway, somehow he is not being recognized as he is going about the city despite this. But then he tries to hail a cab. No one's picking him up. He goes berserk, rips in a fantabulous panel, page 5, panel 4. He rips a car engine directly out from a car's hood, which is just completely clear what's going on. Like, oh yeah, no, he just ripped the engine out of that car. Which
fantastic as always storytelling.
And his
from
face,
Kirby.
He's got a real sort of Quasimodo yelling sanctuary face.
Yes.
And so the cops, as we've talked about, the cops have been quite militarized in this world, although in this world it is much more justified to be more militarized than it is in ours. At one point he says, there he is. One of the cops says, there he is. Get that bazooka up here on the double. I'm like, I don't want the cops to have a bazooka. What? Well, I guess.
The cops have Jack Kirby guns, too? They're not realistic at all?
Yes. No, the New York cops in the Marvel Universe have all sorts of science fiction tech because they're dealing with the Marvel Universe. The Thing goes underground. He grabs a bunch of earth and machinery to plug up the manhole so that people can't come in after him. Johnny is able to just melt a hole in the floor that is able to take the cascade of water and redirect it downward. What was on that level below? Who knows? But it is now flooded.
Wait a second. You skipped over, we get a brief visit with Sue and Crystal where Sue talks about being pregnant. So we have had, this is the first time in the main book, she announced in an annual about 3 or 4 months ago that she was pregnant, but hasn't announced it in the main book yet. So this is the first time we see it. She is still not showing, but she announces she is pregnant. Anyway, go on.
She is telling but not showing. Johnny then continues to fly on ahead, but he hits an electro wall barrier, which is just nothing but a bunch of Kirby Crackle. By the way, Kirby Crackle did not exist until about 2 years earlier. Right? So for the first 3 or so years of the Fantastic Four, Kirby Crackle did not exist. It was not a thing. It just came into being right around the time of the Galactus saga, and it has become just a mainstay of not just Jack Kirby comics, but of anything in Marvel ever since. And so we get a lot of Kirby Crackle here in this issue. The Thing is going around underground, ends up finding out that the Fantastic Four are at the Mad Thinker's headquarters. We get a big fist fight between Mr. Fantastic and the Mad Thinker. The Mad Thinker is not ready for a fist fight with a superhero, even if fist fighting isn't his superpower. He is knocked right out. Then the Thing shows up, and things really get serious here. Mr. Fantastic tries to wrap him up, as Matt, you always talk about how much you like that when Mr. Fantastic is trying to wrap up Ben to keep him from going berserk.
Which happened in each of the first 5 issues of the Fantastic Four, yes.
Right. Mr. Fantastic is getting all stretched out while Ben is hitting him, and then he reaches up, and it's always a little ambiguous how far Mr. Fantastic can stretch. But here he stretches all the way up to a passing helicopter. They do say a low-flying police helicopter, but that does not look very low-flying to me. He is reaching a ways. And, of course, the police helicopter doesn't seem to be bothered by the fact that they're now holding on to the extra weight of Mr. Fantastic and the Thing balanced way back on the back tip of the helicopter. Doesn't seem to, cause that. This pilot deserves extra compensation for this day. He is really, really bringing it.
I belong to a subreddit called Praise the Cameraman, where something absolutely insane is going on, and the cameraman is just rock steady filming the whole thing. So in this case, praise the helicopter pilot.
Yes. So the Mad Thinker has been thrown into jail, but they did not take away his watch, which is clearly a high science fiction watch, and they didn't think to take it away. So he's able to summon one of his androids to come and break him out.
No, I don't think the android is breaking him out. I think the android is just going to kill the Fantastic Four and not freeing Mad Thinker at all.
Oh, is that so?
Sets up a perfect alibi.
Okay.
I couldn't have killed him. I'm not a 12-foot robot. I've been in jail.
Okay, I misread that. Okay, so then he's able to trigger the android to come and fight the Fantastic Four. I will say page 19. This feels like a Gene splash page.
Yeah, it does, which is not a compliment.
Right. And that we have a running thing about how Gene Colan tends to have some really odd decisions for what to make into splash pages. And this is right up there. By the way, I know that this is just an android and not human anatomy, but seeing as how he's supposed to be humanoid, I will point out that we're starting to get some of the kind of just gestures at, hey, these are muscles, kids, kind of stuff that we're going to be getting more and more from Kirby over the years, rather than anything referring to actual muscles in the body, particularly that right thigh there on page 19 in particular.
The right thigh with the complete absence of buttock above it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes. Well, once again, it is an android. Perhaps that's the way the androids are. I don't know. Anyway, one way or the other, it's able to run right up the side of the building, which is kind of neat. And so it comes in the door. And so this is still the Mad Thinker's
No,
headquarters?
we're in the Baxter Building at this point.
We're back to the Baxter building now.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So, the android is running up the side of the Baxter Building, comes crashing in through the wall at the same time that Sue Richards has decided she can't hold herself back any longer, comes in through the door facing this killer android, and Johnny, Ben, and Reed all unconscious laying around, and it's just her and the android in their 3 unconscious bodies. So,
and we go on to a 4th issue. This storyline should never have been 4 issues.
Next issue, and so it ends.
Yes, but it never should have been 4 issues. Keep in mind, when I was last reading these comics, it's when I was reading them to my son. And while I was reading these comics to my son, you and I, for this podcast, were doing Fantastic Four number, I think it was 19, when they introduced the Mad Thinker, and Andy, his awesome android. And Andy, the awesome android, had so much personality. There was that first issue. It was a done-in-one story, and I think the X-Men all ran away from home to take jobs in the circus and various other places, and then they all came back and fought the Mad Thinker, who had his own android, and it was such a wonderful done-in-one story, and now the stories have become so Elephantine. I realize that I'm complaining about this long before it becomes something to really complain about. Like, Jeff, you were talking about the Superior Spider-Man story before. That story went on for like 3 years. and it's like, what? Okay, you're going to do a brain-switching storyline between Doc Ock and Spider-Man that's going to go on for 3 years? Like, I realize that I'm being very entitled to already be complaining about this here in 1968, but I'm already complaining about it.
You were not the only one. The publisher of Marvel, Martin Goodman, started to complain. Now, he never read the comics. He just looked at the covers, and if the covers were good, then they would sell. But the sales started to dip down, and he realized that people were telling multi-part stories, which meant that if you bought a comic, you didn't get a story. You got the beginning of a story, or the middle, in this case, or the end if you buy next week's, or next year's, or next month's issue. So he was like, you gotta have these done in ones. You gotta have a beginning, middle, and end, and you you can have like a mythology running through in the background, so you can have Vision and Wonder Man and whoever they're in love with and swapping brain patterns around, but that's not the crux of the story. That's always just the side issues.
Yeah. No, I'm with Martin Goodman on this. I think that the original done-in-one Mad Thinker storyline is vastly superior to this 4-part Mad Thinker storyline.
You have specifically said that it was a 2-part story that ended up, hooking you because you wanted to find part 2 to that story and you couldn't find it, and so that's what sent you on a search for more Marvel comics.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm contradicting myself.
Okay.
And cliffhangers don't count. Like the reveal that Doctor Doom is on the railroad tracks out of nowhere. Maybe because it has something to do with the Thing riding on the subway in this issue. Maybe they connect later on next month.
Yeah, Doctor Doom was down there looking for the Thing riding the subway tracks.
So, Jeff, I know this is not directly involved in what you were writing about, but since you were doing some research at the time, there is a guy who shows up on some Marvel Comics forums who has made references before to the company that buys Marvel from Mr. Goodman as being a CIA front.
I had not heard anything about it being a CIA front.
Okay.
Cadence Industries? They were like a parking company.
This was Perfect Film and Chemical.
Oh, okay. They became Cadence.
Okay. All right. But according to this one dude, he'll just say, oh, yes, when it was purchased by Perfect Film and Chemical, a CIA front company, and just go on with whatever else. And
back up. Boop, boop,
yeah,
boop,
exactly.
back up.
So I think that somebody did say, can you tell me more about that? He's like, I'm working on a book. And then, I've never heard about the book.
There is a book coming out that said that there was an unheralded, uncredited ghostwriter that Stan Lee worked with who was writing a lot of the classic 1960s comics, and that hasn't come out yet. And I don't know how much of that is true and how much of that is like Stan hired a guy and he wrote like 3 issues and Stan didn't give him enough credit.
Right.
Oh, I thought you were then going to reveal who it was. I thought you were then going to reveal, and it secretly was Dorothy Parker or something like that. Okay.
No, the idea was that this guy was never credited, so his name wouldn't mean anything.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if that book ever comes out. Okay, everyone. Are we done talking about Fantastic Four number 70? Do we have anything else to say?
He's been hypnotized into like hating and fighting Reed Richards. Because Reed Richards turned him into the Thing. But that's his thing. That's what the Thing does. It's like hypnotizing Wimpy into eating hamburgers. How would you know if you had succeeded?
Okay, I'm going to have to use that one in the future. that is one of the greatest similes I've ever heard. Okay.
Like hypnotizing Wimpy into eating hamburgers. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to Strange Tales number 164, Doctor Strange and Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So we have a Doctor Strange cover and it says Nightmare. So once again, as we talked about in our previous episode, they've started going and putting whoever's on the cover first in the book. So we have Doctor Strange first in this book for the first time ever. He's always been the backup feature, but now he is the first story in this issue. So let's go ahead and cover him before we cover S.H.I.E.L.D. Let's go into Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts Nightmare. Stan Lee, brewer of brooding fantasies, uncorks this ominous opus by Jim Lawrence and Dan Adkins, inscribed in the lurid and legendary lettering of Al Kurzrock. So we have Dan Adkins seemingly, now I don't know, it's always impossible to say whether Dan Adkins is swiping or not because he has a deep and rich swipe file. But Dan Adkins has said, in later interviews, he said that he started off doing every single panel a swipe when he was doing Doctor Strange because Stan Lee had told him to do that. Stan Lee had said, I want this book to be entirely swiped from Steve Ditko, and that's what Dan Adkins did. And Dan Adkins said in that same interview, later he stopped doing that and he started doing his own original penciling and inking. Well, I think that may happen this issue. This is a beautifully penciled and inked issue, and it doesn't seem like it's swiped to me. We begin with a cover that is right out of a lot of the classic Doctor Strange artists, where Doctor Strange is sort of falling through space, and then you've got sort of the halved face of Victoria Bentley that is in the foreground and has been sort of sliced in half to have Doctor Strange flowing through space, and it looks really gorgeous. Doctor Strange has been told that Victoria Bentley is on a technological world, but instead he gets sent to a very much organic world, and it's like, this isn't the technological world I was looking for. He fights a giant slug that I think Dan Atkins does a really nice job with. Slug with tentacles that shoot laser beams. And Spider-Man,
as one does.
Doctor Strange manages to freeze the slug. Of course, comics is never an ideal medium for freezing someone because everyone is constantly frozen. That is the nature of the comic book storytelling medium. But so then he is again trying to find this technological world. We get a big full-page splash on page 7 that is taken right from the movie Fantasia, where he is looking up at a mountain with a giant winged demon rising out of the top of the mountain. So kind of a swipe. But then he is fighting this giant winged creature, but then he finally finds, hey, here's some technology. This is where Victoria Bentley must be. And then indeed he starts talking to Yandroth, Scientist Supreme, who says, I've kidnapped Victoria Bentley to be my queen. And as you see, Victoria Bentley is safe. I intend to make her my queen and rule the many planets you now see before you. So then Doctor Strange says, okay, Yandroth is the guy I got to go find. I'm going to go to him next. Next-ish, the Mystic and the Machine. So I should point out, Doctor Strange, at this point, we are about 18 issues into the storyline, and Doctor Strange still has not taken a nap. This is, every storyline has read directly into the next storyline for the last 18 issues of this book.
Yeah, he hasn't taken a nap or a leak.
Or a leak. No. Must have some Depends in there or something.
He's related to Jack Bauer.
Yes. He is the Jack Bauer of his day. We just keep going from storyline to storyline, but now he's looking for Victoria Bentley. I like this issue a lot. I really think the art is gorgeous and does not seem to be swiped. And Jim Lawrence is continuing to do a perfectly fine job as writer, picking up a storyline that many writers have already cycled through and is doing just fine. What did you guys think of this issue? Let's start with you, Jeff. What do you think of this issue?
I totally agree. The art is gorgeous. Each frame is something that you could hang up on your wall and people would have a conversation piece about it. I do like more story in my stories. I don't have much to grab onto when it comes to what's going on because we're not in the real world. He's just fighting a giant slug. I do love the Scientist Supreme angle. I love the idea of science versus magic, and there's two different Supremes that are going at it. And that's an idea that was picked up like 15 years ago when they tried to make Hank Pym Scientist Supreme, but they didn't really do anything with it. You can understand what the Sorcerer Supreme is. He's the magician who defends America and the world against any sort of magical threats. I don't know what a Scientist Supreme is supposed to do other than fight the Sorcerer Supreme for the supremeness.
I would think that Scientist Supreme would be whoever is running AIM at the moment if they actually won domination over the world. Like, that would be Scientist Supreme.
Yes.
But yeah.
I also think Doctor Strange has the weakest villain bench of anyone in comics. Like, have hardly any of these people have come back, and when they have, it's not memorable storylines.
Yeah, there's Nightmare, there's Mordo, there's Dormammu. Those are three heavy hitters, but after that, the bench gets a little thin.
Well, Living Tribunal,
sure. There's Silver Dagger, there's a couple.
Yeah, but no, I see what you're talking about. I mean, certainly stacked against Spider-Man,
yes.
no one's gonna come close. Only Batman over with the distinguished competition comes close to
Right.
Spider-Man.
Right, I realized that Daredevil has imported most of his villains. No one cares about Stiltman, they care about Kingpin, and that started off as a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, well, Daredevil's been fighting old Human Torch Strange Tales villains for the last several issues. That's really scraping the bottom of the barrel. He's fighting the Trapster, and who did he fight before that? Another old Strange Tales villain.
Beetle.
I don't remember. The Beetle. Ugh. Okay. All right. So, do we have anything else to say about this Doctor Strange, or should we move on to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the back half of the book?
Well, you were saying, I don't know if he's swiping anything. Well, there's always the difference between swiping and photo reference, and, how much is there a difference between those? But page 10, panel 3, that face of the Scientist Supreme, that is definitely using reference of some sort. Whether that's photo reference or swiping, it is definitely picking up something. But that's not that there's anything wrong with that, as they say. Yeah, but you're right. Nothing much seems to happen in this issue, but it's beautiful doing nothing.
Yes. It's quite nice. Yeah, I'm just looking at my own notes. I talk about how the first page looks kind of like an M.C. Escher drawing, which is a high compliment. I think that Doctor Strange gets a lot of good use out of the years of swiping M.C. Escher drawings or emulating them. It's interesting. He thinks about Clea for the first time in a long time. He's like, oh, yeah, here I am trying to save Victoria Bentley, but I kind of wish I was saving that girl Clea. Whatever happened to her? But he just thinks about her briefly. Okay, let's go and move on to the back half of the book of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let's see.
My favorite thing about the Doctor Strange character is that there wasn't a racist caricature for him to fight. What's happening with Nick Fury?
Uh-oh. Bad news. Nick Fury, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Supreme Quarters, International Espionage Law Enforcement Division. When comes Black Noon. Stan Lee, editor, Jim Steranko, writer, illustrator, Bill Everett, inker, Artie Simek, letterer. So we have had Jim Steranko penciling and inking himself for a long time. He was, plotting, scripting, penciling, inking, and coloring the book for a long time. Then recently he's been having inkers. He had Frank Giacoia ink him for a couple issues, who was doing a shockingly good job, and it looked just like Steranko inking himself. And this issue, we have Bill Everett inking him, who tends to be a rather heavy-handed inker. Well, once again, it just looks like Steranko is inking himself. This is a really beautifully inked issue, and it doesn't feel like I'm getting much Everett here at all. It feels like Steranko must be doing very heavy pencils. People who are inking him look just like when he inks himself.
I'm seeing a little bit more Everett here than I saw Giacoia in the previous two issues. But yeah, still, I am shocked and amazed that Jim Steranko was not inking himself throughout this whole thing. I thought he had been.
And we have a gorgeous splash page here. So, Jeff, I should explain to you that we have not been referring to the Claw by, well, I'll go ahead and call him the Yellow Claw here briefly. We have not been referring to the Yellow Claw as the Yellow Claw because that is a racist epithet. We have instead been referring to him as he will later be called the Golden Claw or just the Claw. So let's just call him the Claw. The Claw is going ahead and he thinks he is disintegrating Nick Fury, and we get an absolutely gorgeous splash page of Nick Fury being disintegrated, seemingly, as he is being dissipated into mist. But then it turns out instead of being disintegrated, he was actually teleported away by Suan, and I keep getting this wrong. Suan is the Claw's niece, something like that, stepdaughter, something. So then, and then she's like, all right, now that I have teleported you here, I'm going to teleport you back to the barbershop where you live. Apparently everybody knows about the barbershop at this point. So if Suan knows about it, that's not good. But so then he's go ahead and teleported to the barbershop. And then
wait, I thought it was a hardware store. Every time I go there, it's a hardware store. Are you sure it's a barbershop? Oh, there's a gag later on that the barbershop can transform into a hardware store so that people don't know where it is.
Well, because that's really going to fool people, is people walking by and being like, wasn't that a barbershop the other day? When did the barbershop go out of business and the hardware store come in and come by the next day? Wait a minute, the barbershop's back.
Now it's a Spirit Halloween store. How did that happen?
Well, no, that would not have to be explained.
Yes. So then he teleports back to the barbershop. We cut briefly to the Claw and Herr Voltzmann plotting to destroy the planet Earth. We have an absolutely gorgeous panel on page 6 of Nick Fury being examined on a medical table in S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, and they show the various levels of his body on the screens around him.
It reminds me very much of Dr. Manhattan years later when he's trying to reform his body after being disintegrated.
Yes, very much so. So
all the acetate layers in high school when you learn about the body.
Yes.
Biology textbook.
That too.
So then Nick Fury, after he gets examined, is like, I'm going to put on my invisibility suit, I'm going to get my invisible car, and I'm going to try to infiltrate the Claw's headquarters. I like how they point out that, okay, the problem with an invisible car is that everybody would just run into it all the time. So we've got a follow car and a lead car that are going along with our invisible car in order to keep everybody from just running into it. It's like, okay, by that point, maybe you should just give up on the whole invisible car idea. But Nick Fury gets the car that they're following to get to wreck so that he can climb in the back. He goes ahead and follows there and does indeed get to the Claw's headquarters, jumps out of the Claw, has a big gun pointed at him, but the Claw gets a jump on him and hits him with freezing rays, and eventually he is knocked out, and then he wakes up and he has been strapped to a laser that is being pointed down at the island of Manhattan and is about to disintegrate it. And Black Noon has arrived next month if S.H.I.E.L.D. dies. I think this is an absolutely amazing issue. I think it is just gorgeously potted and penciled and inked. Sorry, not inked. This is absolutely gorgeously potted and penciled by Steranko, beautifully inked by Bill Everett. and presumably colored by Stranko. I don't know, but it is an absolutely gorgeous issue. What did you guys think of it? Let's start with you, Jeff. What do you think of this issue?
I really enjoyed the art. This felt like comics you were proud to carry around and show to other people. My wife asked because she's not a huge comics reader, and I was explaining that like some of these Marvel comics in the 60s were hot bunked together, so that you got Doctor Strange and then she said, "Oh, so and another magic person too?" And I said, "Oh no, Nick
No.
Fury." No, the idea was you'd put two disparate people together so that you'd have two reasons to buy the book instead of two people that had any reason to be together in the book. But in this case, what joins them together is the art first nature of it. Like, if you try to adapt this story into another medium, it would kind of fall apart. This is a story that's designed for comics. It's showcasing how beautiful comics can tell a story.
Yes.
So if you're looking for like a story that works in any narrative medium, this is not it. But if you're looking for just fantastic pop art comics, this is it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, one thing I found confusing is when Fury is in the back of the car that is smuggling him into the Claw's headquarters. It seems like, okay, the car is driving. He follows the car in. He gets out of the car, holds the Claw and his other villains at gunpoint, and looks out the window. And guess
I know what you're going to say. Yes,
we're up a mile above Manhattan in this admittedly gorgeous Steranko tech ship. But how did they get up there? They were just literally got in there in a car.
Yeah, I assume that the whole thing took off into the air shortly after he got inside, and he has not realized this, is what I would assume.
Yeah, I would like a little bit more than that, but but I do have to say, that ship that is hovering over, well, I guess it's really hovering over Brooklyn at that particular moment on its way to Manhattan, is just unique. I mean, I've never seen another comic book tech ship look like that before.
Yeah, it's insectile.
Yes.
It almost, there's a shimmer almost to the plates in the circular plates in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got these spindly, fragile, delicate looking legs that end in little rockets that are keeping it aloft, and it's got these little flying points coming out of it, and then it's got this bulbous sort of thing coming out the bottom. It's just, I mean, it's unique. I've never seen anything like it.
Yep.
And he goes to town with the drawing of New York City underneath. Under it, you can see Randall's Island, you can see Brooklyn and Queens, various different bridges.
Yeah, absolutely. Just stunning. So, page 10 of this story. If you're listening to this while washing dishes or whatever, and just remember, look up page 10 of issue 164 of Strange Tales, and behold the majesty.
Yes.
And the Sky Dragon that he's in, the death trap at the very end, this is like the most Dr. Evil style death trap, where it's a hat on a hat on a hat, because there's a hole that drops a mile down, and you could throw Nick Fury out of that. He is strapped to a device that dangles him over this hole, and that's not what's going to kill him. There's blades all over the place that will cut him if he goes down this hole. Again, that's not what's going to kill him. There's a gigantic laser aimed at his torso. That apparently is what is going to kill him.
Yes. And yet somehow, I suspect none of these things will actually kill him in the next issue. We'll see.
Hey, no spoilers. I haven't read the next issue yet.
Sorry.
One thing I'll point out is when the barbershop front is apparently very boring that day, and the two folks are sitting around talking about how bored they are. One of them says to the other one, "Just the other day, this guy comes in, see? Hair down to here." So he sits down in the chair and asks for a shave. Sheesh. Which, I find funny, although at the same time, I'm like, well, you're lucky he's asking for a shave. I mean, beards are in.
On that same page, on the bottom, is that Sean Connery? The guy saying, "Take it easy, chum. You act like I'm an enemy spy." I think that's supposed to be Connery.
You're right. Somebody's going in the door. Yes, even the way he's holding his cigarette is Sean Connery. Yes.
That is a great catch.
somebody has shown up at the door of the barbershop and they're saying, sorry, we're closed. And then you're right, it's supposed to be Sean Connery who is holding a cigarette in Sean Connery's special way. And he's saying, take it easy, chum. You act like I'm an enemy spy. Yes, indeed it is. Good point.
Nice. All right.
Okay. All right. Should we go ahead and move on to Tales of Suspense? Is that you, Steve?
I believe that is me, yes. Let's go ahead and do it. So, Tales of Suspense, Iron Man and Captain America, The Coming of Whiplash. So first thing I want to do, I want to point out on the cover, can either of you try to explain to me what is going on with the things on his waist/legs?
Yeah. Makes no sense. What on earth are those?
So what it looks like, it's okay. The two descriptions I have come up with for these. One is reverse chaps, right? So like chaps, but the quads are open rather than the hamstrings. The other thing is it's like each leg has its own cape.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So Gene Colan, I love Gene Colan, but his character designs aren't necessarily what he's best at.
Nope. And he's very wisely not tried to redesign Steve Ditko's wonderful design for Iron Man. He's like, let's stick with that.
Absolutely.
The cover is crazy in that Iron Man's logo is like 85% of the logo size, and the remaining 15% is Captain America.
Well,
it's
this
like
is a new thing they're doing
it.
this month, where they're trying to have like the star of this book. So this is like Iron Man and Captain America, and then Iron Man comes first, and he's got the bigger logo, and he's got the whole cover, and then Captain America is, reduced to a backup feature essentially in this issue, and then they're going to switch them in the next issue. So it'll be Captain America in big letters on the cover, and then Iron Man in little letters. This is a new thing they're starting to do.
And they did the same thing with Doctor Strange and Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And as a matter of fact, the of S.H.I.E.L.D. is partially obscured by the hand of the Scientist Supreme, so you can't even read the whole thing. So I think that is a new thing that they're doing here. By the way, also, we've talked on this podcast before about color holds, and this cover does use a color hold to show shimmering energy around Whiplash's whip.
Yes.
So, The Coming of Whiplash, another suspense-filled super spectacular by Stan the Man Lee, Gene the Dean Colan, in cataclysmic collaboration with Frank Giacoia inker and Artie Simek letterer. The Grey Gargoyle had been defeated by Iron Man, but he had to short out his own battery in order to do it, and of course, at this point in time, his chest battery is the only thing that was keeping his heart beating. So that means that he is on the verge of death. Jasper Sitwell, who is a new supporting cast for this book, is trying his best to get the helmet off of Iron Man because he thinks that he needs air. He pulls out some sort of little shield gizmo that was designed by Tony Stark himself, and which is like a unidirectional explosive device that he's going to try to use to blow off the helmet. Now, how it being unidirectional is supposed to keep it from blowing his head off, I don't quite understand.
No, there's no good direction if you're going to try to blow someone's helmet off. It's not like there's like, okay, I'll aim it in just the right way to blow his helmet off without affecting his head. I don't see how that would work.
And Gene Colan was not able to pull it off in the art to where it looks at all believable. But I do have to say, Gene Colan always loves doing the civilian faces and stuff here. So page 2, panels 2 and 3, Jasper Sitwell's face in those two panels is just delightful.
Yeah.
It has tons of fun with it. Well, the unidirectional explosion does not do any good, so Jasper heads off to try to find Stark. Meanwhile, we see somebody we haven't seen in a while, Mr. Stark's cousin, what is his name
Morgan
here?
Stark.
Morgan Stark.
So this is the second time this month that we talked about another one in our previous episode. Second time this month where they're like, remember that storyline that wasn't very good? Well, we think we can revisit it and make it better. And, they're not wrong. Like, the idea of Foggy running for district attorney was an interesting enough idea to revisit in a better storyline than the one we did last time. And this time, the idea that Tony Stark has a no-good gambler brother who is constantly in hock to the mob, that's not a terrible idea. It was in one of the all-time worst Iron Man stories of all time last time we saw it, in which it had invaders from the moon. Actual moon men were involved in that story. And it was truly terrible, but it's not the worst idea. And I kind of like how they save it in this issue.
Yeah, and
but he's not in debt to the mob. It's not the mafia, because the mafia doesn't exist. It's the Magia, an independent criminal organization that does exist.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
I always call it the Magia, but you call it the Magia?
It's probably Magia. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Morgan Stark is gambling on a ship, one of these ships that would go out past the into international waters, so they could go ahead and have a legal casino before you could pretty much have casinos anywhere, like you can these days. Major League Sports, brought to you by gambling. Anyway, so apparently Morgan Stark has gotten too far into debt, and they're going to make an example out of him. But then he says, oh, you know what? I can bring you Iron Man. How about that? They say, okay, yes, we will wipe out your debt if you can do that. We see that there is this guy Whiplash who is there in the ship, who was going to be his executioner, as far as I can tell, and who was getting really antsy to actually kill somebody here, but he'll have to wait a little bit longer.
But suddenly, Whiplash is not in the room with them practicing his whip, which would make sense. He's in the next room over, and they just hear him whipping his whip over and over again in the next room. And then at one point, they watch a video of him in the next room, and they're like, oh, look at this video of Whiplash in the next room whipping his whip furiously. And it's like, wouldn't this be more clear storytelling if he was just in the room with them practicing his whip? But anyway.
Well, also a little bit oddly, the gambling ship has an elevator down to a little submarine where Whiplash and all of this stuff is going on, and we actually get to see a little elevator car going back up from the submarine to the ship at the end of this sequence, which is okay. I don't know why we had to add that layer of complexity into this. That was not really necessary. Anyway, Morgan Stark is able to bluff his way into taking Iron Man in a car with him, saying, oh, I can bring him to Mr. Stark and he will do what he needs to do. So they let him go. But Iron Man, meanwhile, in the back seat is like, aha, he left me near the cigarette adapter, which, of course, I've got an adapter to plug in and get my electricity from it. So this is actually reviving Iron Man. But he plays possum until they get into the mobsters' headquarters or meeting room or whatever. At which point,
I should say that I remember doing that back in the day, that I used to plug in like my CD Discman into the car's cigarette lighter. Do you remember doing this? Yeah, you could plug in stuff into your car's cigarette lighter and get electricity out of it. And I remember doing that back in the day.
I mean, I think I was still doing that with a 2005 car that I had. I think we were still doing that on, or no, maybe it was the one before that. Maybe it was the late 90s, like the 1995 car that I had. Maybe that was the one where I was still doing it. Anyway, one way or the other, yes. There was a cigarette lighter contraption that heated up a coil of metal that would light your cigarette, but it did that with electrical resistance, and so if you plugged something else into that socket, you could get electricity from it. And that's how we tended to charge up our cell phones and whatnot before they just had USB ports. So Iron Man is taking out the mobsters. Whiplash is still going on in the other room practicing his whip, and then at the end comes out and is approaching Iron Man, who is looking over his shoulder very worried. And it says, next, the warrior and the whip. And I really do like those last three panels, the sequence of, Iron Man being like, oh, good, I've got the bad guys trapped in there. And then he starts turning his head around like, wait a minute, what's coming the other way? I think that's quite well done.
Yeah, and then just the shadow of a whip falls across him, and that's the end of the issue. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah. Jeff, do you have any other thoughts on this issue?
This reads very different in the modern day of cell phones, like you were saying, like recharging your cell phone in a car. And assuming that Iron Man is in the back of that car for a half hour. Think about how long it would take you to charge your phone if you only had a half-hour charge in a car. It's not that much. You're on a very tight tech budget. So I like that he's realizing I'm at I was at 1% and I'm up to 18%, which still isn't much. So I need to do the most I can using the least amount of energy.
Yes.
And in the 60s, that was a real sort of Apollo 13 maneuver. We have like a AA battery that we're using to power this entire thing. So we need to be very economical with our power usage. And you don't see that in Iron Man comics nowadays. Now it's like, yeah, this is a $3 billion suit. I had 19 of them made per city just in case one of them breaks.
Yes. Exactly.
But in here, it's like, I need my cigarette lighter.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking that he probably is using the 2.1 amp cigarette lighter adapter rather than the 1.1 amp, which, would not do it in this case.
No.
Yeah. All right, so shall we move on to Captain America?
Yes, let me just, I thought this was a pretty good issue. I think it's good to have Morgan Stark back. I think he was, a pretty good character who was wasted on a completely useless issue before. And I think it's good to have him here. I like Gene Colan's art better here than in Daredevil. Even though they're both inked by Giacoya. Was Daredevil inked by Giacoya? I think it was. But I think that, even though you would think Colan would be better at Daredevil because he's more of a sort of fluid character than Iron Man is, I think that for whatever reason, Colan is doing a better job here than he did in Daredevil. Like Daredevil, Colan's pencils have gotten really loose, like really, really loose and sketchy, especially in Daredevil, and they're a little bit more under control here.
Yeah, actually, that's right. I hadn't realized that, yes, we did get Giacoya back on Daredevil. We had been stuck with Tartaglione. Unfortunately, I would rather have be stuck with Tartaglione on Daredevil rather than have him inking Marie Severin. But,
Yeah, true.
You're going to get your Tartaglione somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Captain America, living legend of World War II, and so it begins, reintroducing the Black Panther. Cap has just received an urgent call for help, but upon reaching the site, he suddenly finds there's an explosion. It's a trap. The rooftop's been mined. So that's a real, just sort of starting way into the action here. We're giving you no lead up. Hey, guess what? There's an explosion, and here's why it happened, and we're off to the races. Phantasmagorically produced by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby. Embellished by Joe Sinnott. Lettered by Artie Simak. So Captain America falls off the building from this explosion, but he is able to catch onto a cornice with just his foot. One of the bad guys who I guess lured him here to kill him is gonna, toss a grenade at him rather than just, just kicking his foot off. But no, they're gonna, of course, bring him up, lift him up, and do something else with him. Because why would you ever just let the character die when you have the drop on them? No. There always has to be something better. So this one thug grabs him and is gonna punch him in the face, but then Captain America headbutts him in the face. Captain America stuffs with the guy in the suit down a chimney, which is kind of entertaining. The other guy he ends up knocking out, and the guy he knocked out falls forward in a way that is clearly going to crack his skull open. That's his position as he falls over. It's like, oh no, that's not just passing out. That's going to be a possibly life-ending injury there. We then see, completely apropos of nothing, in Wakanda, the Black Panther is going out to figure out why a sentry outpost has gone silent, and he reaches the sentry outpost to find that they're wiped out. Looks like that's another word for dead, but, of course, they always want to be careful when it comes to the Comics Code Authority. So they've been wiped out. He then finds a bunch of people in high-tech stuff who are doing things to this high-tech outpost. So we go back to Captain America. He is looking in a mugshot book for these two guys and is able to identify them. They're both members of, quote, the Syndicate. And a doctor examines him and says, you are the most basically gives him the bill of health that Trump's doctors always give to him. Incredible! I've never checked anyone in such superb physical condition. In this case, though, I believe it. The cop says, hey, look, you should leave town for a while because it's too dangerous for you in town, which I'm a little bit unsure of why that is, but okay, sure, fine. But Captain America says, yeah, but I can't do that because I can't run away, and also I'm heartbroken. I'm heartsick for Agent 13. I do notice that Cap has a little monologue here where he's saying of the cops, they're underpaid, overworked, and underappreciated. No one calls them superheroes or makes a fuss over them, and yet it's men like that, the thousands of unsung cops on the beat, who keep our streets from turning into jungles and who make our cities safe, even for the unthinking cop haters themselves. It's funny how, Captain America has very much become a battleground in the culture war over the last decade or two. And this would be something for the people more on the right to point to say that, no, Cap belongs to us and not you people over there. And I just figured I'd mention that. So he's pining over Agent 13. We see that Agent 13 is getting ready to go out on a mission. Apparently, she has tried to call Steve a couple of times and hasn't gotten an answer. They don't say why it is she hasn't gotten an answer, but she has.
I would assume that Nick Fury is intercepting the calls and keeping them from getting through. That would be my guess, but it doesn't say.
Well, also, there were no answering machines back in the day. It could just be he was out getting blown up on a rooftop. So,
yes.
He wasn't home to answer the phone. So she's getting into disguise, and it turns out that she has subdued a foreign spy and is now impersonating her. And she is going out to fulfill that mission in her own special way. So she heads out. It's clear that she also is pining for Steve, the same way that Steve is pining for her. Then Steve wakes up, hears a thump on the roof, and crawls up the outside of the building to get up to the roof to see what's going on, and finds there's a strange science fiction ship which has been sent from Wakanda, and he is talking to T'Challa on a radio transceiver, a TV transceiver sort of thing. T'Challa is saying, the reason I'm contacting you this way instead of in some simpler way is because I need you to just get in this ship and come. It's pre-programmed to bring you here in 53 minutes at Mach speed. And Captain America is saying to himself, it can't be a trap. Not with the Black Panther behind it. And it's like, yeah, you're assuming that's actually the Black Panther, but, I guess, you've spoken with the guy before, right? Or actually, has he met Black Panther?
No, I don't think they've ever met. He's just taking a lot on faith here.
Yeah, so that could just be a trap, but it's not, though. So then he takes off, and next issue we will be in Wakanda. I do notice that Manhattan does not look like Manhattan on
No.
page 11 there at all. It doesn't look like any part of New York.
As opposed to Jim Stranko, who was drawing a very recognizable New York underneath that ship in that book.
And Jack Kirby.
Shield.
And Jack Kirby has done a very recognizable Manhattan at various points as well, but he just wasn't feeling it here.
No.
Yeah.
Now, it looks like a beautiful city. I just don't know where that is.
No.
Yeah. So, Jeff, what do you have to say about this story?
I'm going to pick up on what you said before about how Captain America was maybe not getting his messages because there's no answering machine. I want to see what a Jack Kirby answering machine message looks like. I'm imagining it's like some sort of Beetlejuice statue that weighs about 450 pounds.
Something like that, yes.
Did you notice that Sidney Poitier is the face model for T'Challa? On the second to last page?
I mean, that would be on brand.
Yeah. He's still the voice in my head whenever I read T'Challa comics. Chadwick Boseman is amazing, was fantastic in that role, but I still hear Sidney Poitier.
Huh.
I can see that. I can see that. They call me Mr. Tibbs.
And on the page where Captain America is defending the police, we get another Jack Kirby flat face looking right up Steve Rogers' nose, like the Master Control program at the end of Tron, just a huge, wide face right in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Page 7, panel 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the thing that's making Gil Kane going mad, and for the rest of his life, Gil Kane is just drawing noses the way Quentin Tarantino draws feet.
Yes, something like that. All right, Matt, how about you?
I thought this was a really good issue. I think it's fun to have sort of an action-packed beginning where he's taking out some syndicate goons. It's fun to get a glimpse of what Agent 13 is up to. I always like her. And then it's great to get him involved with the Black Panther. This is going to be sort of Jack Kirby's farewell to the Black Panther for a while. He's going to do a final Black Panther storyline here in Captain America. And spoiler alert, it's going to end with Captain America recommending that Black Panther take his place in the Avengers. And then we are going to have the John Buscema Black Panther for a while. And Kirby is only going to return to the character spectacularly and bizarrely in the late 70s once he is returned to Marvel. But first, we get a little farewell to Kirby Black Panther here, and I think it looks great. Kirby sent out Black Panther, which is even better. And I think this is a beautiful looking issue. I'm excited for the storyline that is to come. I liked it quite a bit. Yep, that's it.
So, in that case, I believe that brings us to our last issue of the month, which is Avengers number 48, which is you.
Yes, so we should explain that Captain Marvel is bi-monthly at this point. So we do not have Captain Marvel this month. We just
Actually, it might be quarterly. We'll have to double check, but I thought it was quarterly at this point, but we'll see.
God knows that's never a book they publish reliably, so that would just make sense. Let's go and do the Avengers, The Black Knight Lives Again. We have a very interesting angle here on the cover where we've got I assume this is like the inside, George Tuska penciled and inked, where we're looking straight down at the Avengers who are falling seemingly to their deaths and Black Knight who is going up towards us. The Black Knight Lives Again. I've said before that I just love the Black Knight's helmet. I just love his whole costume. I love everything about him. He's got his lance, which doesn't really say, which is good. I think he should be a sword-wielding guy, not a lance-wielding guy. But anyway, we jump to the inside of the issue, and we get, unfortunately, John Buscema taking another month off. But we get much better guest artists than Don Heck. In the last issue, we had Buscema inked by George Tuska. Well, now, with John Buscema gone, they let George Tuska do the whole issue, penciling and inking. And it's not terrible. I think it's okay. Stan Lee propitiously ponders and presents a Roy Thomas George Tuska saga of senseless staggering splendor, luxuriously lettered by Artie Simek. And I think that Tuska's doing okay. He's definitely imitating Don Heck in terms of the tininess of Scarlet Witch's waist, which is unfortunate. But so then Magneto, when last we saw him, had kidnapped Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch and has bound them up. Toad is hopping all around saying, just go ahead and kill them. Kill the master for daring to defy you. Let them pay the supreme penalty for allying themselves with the accursed Homo sapiens. But of course, Magneto doesn't do it. It will not be revealed for many years later that he is secretly their father, and I guess when it is revealed, it will turn out that he did not know that himself. So I guess at this point, nobody knows. They don't know he's their father, and he doesn't know they're his kids.
And haven't they undone that in retcons and stuff since? Or
I think
am
that
I making that up?
When they were when there were rights issues with Fox owning the X-Men characters, they undid that, and then I think they may have redone it later. So then Magneto foolishly leaves him alone. Quicksilver gets a wrist free, has a little radio receiver in his belt, calls the Avengers, but Jarvis is there going like, oh, somebody's calling our radio. Well, that's okay. I know that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are monitoring a radio duty. I'm sure they'll get it. Like, dude, it's them calling. They have gone off and gotten kidnapped, you fool. But he just seems like a fool here. You cut to Hawkeye swinging around thinking about Black Widow. Finally, Jarvis comes home from whatever he was off doing and says, like, that's funny, they haven't answered the phone yet. I'll go ahead and answer it. Answers it, finds out they're there. He tries to call up Wasp and Goliath, who are involved in a humorous little thing where they're trying to stop someone who is cheating at roulette. And then they go ahead. We cut briefly to Hercules, who is on Olympus. This is the one part in the issue where I really regret Tuska penciling and inking it instead of having John Buscema penciling, because Olympus looks nowhere near as fabulous as it looked in the last issue. But then we finally cut back to Dane Whitman, who is still inside his castle, which Magneto has taken over. He briefly recalls when his uncle, the villainous Black Knight, died and told him everything, and then told him, I want you to use my powers for good. And so then he's like, okay, I'll go ahead and use all your, well, not powers, but use all your Black Knight equipment for good now that you're dead, and I'll become the good Black Knight, Dane Whitman. And he goes in and puts on his new costume, which is so much cooler looking than the original costume. I just love it. Magneto finds Quicksilver. Quicksilver only ever was able to get his one wrist free, so he hasn't gotten away. And he finds out that they've called the Avengers, which he's not happy about. And they decide to all take off. So then they go ahead and take off from the castle. Meanwhile, Dane Whitman has flown to Avengers Mansion. I feel like this issue could have been more cleverly plotted so that the Avengers came to him instead of him having to go to them, but oh well. And this is sort of atrocious comic book plotting here, where in terms of he's like, hi, I'm here to be your friend and I'm here to be nice. And whoops, I accidentally did something that makes me look like a villain. And they're like, look, he's a villain. He's attacking us. And then they get in a big fight. And of course, they get in a big fight for about 5 pages. And the whole time he's just trying to make friends with them, but keeps accidentally doing stuff that makes him look like a villain. And so they keep attacking him all the more. And then finally, he manages to tell them what's going on. So they all go finally to his castle, where they find that Magneto and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch have gotten away. And so then they're like, okay, well, maybe we should all team up to go find them. But he goes, no, where the Black Knight flies, he flies alone. And he takes off. And that is the end of the issue. And the end of the new Black Knight for now. He will not join the Avengers yet. He will join later. But he will just be a recurring guest star for many years first. What did you guys think of this issue? Jeff, what do you think of this issue?
I felt like it took a long time to get going and then ended very quickly.
Yeah.
So the like you said, the pacing was wrong. We saw like the half of Cap's Kooky Quartet getting kidnapped, and then there's some punching, and Jarvis leaves because the phone's ringing, and then like a day later, Jarvis comes back and the phone is still ringing. It's like, oh, I guess I'll pick it up. And I actually kind of like that. Like at first blush, it seems like, why the hell did you have 2 pages of Jarvis not answering the phone? If the resolution is, well, I guess I'll answer that phone. But it shows that he has his own life and that he trusts them to be more competent than they actually are. Now, I love the reverse cheating that Wasp and Giant Man are doing. Just the casual mention, oh yeah, there's ants all over the place. Oh, well, that's okay. You know, it's a luxury casino. We have not just an ant problem, but we literally have ants on the velvet.
And we're not concerned.
Yes,
like,
and I'm going to shrink to cheat on roulette just so that this jerk loses.
Yes. It says, Filbert, there are ants on this roulette table. Don't bother them, Wilma. Maybe they'll bring us some good luck for a change. Yes.
And that when Janet shrinks, her costume, her clothing shrinks, but not her mink stole because they forgot to spray it. And I guess the unstable molecules that let you shrink fabric are now like some sort of like Scotch Guard. So you just need to spray something real quick for 30 seconds and then it becomes unstable molecules. And maybe that explains why Johnny Storm is walking around in civilian clothes that can, catch on fire without burning.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I don't like Hercules without a beard. Its beard looks like season 1 Riker from Next Generation. Put a beard on that guy.
It's like, it almost looks kind of obscene. Like, go ahead and cover that up.
Yeah, and this is, I feel like this whole issue is Roy Thomas trying to do another sort of legacy hero thing, another story about stories, where he's trying to loop in like the medieval Black Knight character plus the previous Black Knight villain who showed up and a new character who's going to redeem the Black Knight name and take place in the modern world so he can be an Avenger one day, ...
Yep.
Yeah. So, a few different observations for me. Pietro, with that radio that he just has to have this thing that says, "This tiny microphone, M-, which I slipped into my belt as a precaution, M-, is our best chance." It's like, once again, Roy, don't call attention to it. Just, say, I'll use my Avengers communicator.
Yes, that's all you need to say. Yeah.
That's all you needed to say. And
he gets away with that much later on with a much bigger lampshade hanging, where on page 12, Dane says, "I even managed to create a second mutant winged stallion, much more swifter and more powerful than that used to be used by the villainous Black Knight." Like, how did you create a winged stallion?
He's a scientist.
Do that?
Scientists do that sort of thing.
Yes, he's not mad, but his uncle was mad, so there's that. The next panel, page 3, final panel. Toad's face looks like, once again, bringing up Twilight Zone episodes. That Twilight Zone episode with the the woman whose face is unbandaged and she's a beautiful woman and everyone thinks
yeah,
she's
Eye
hideous.
of the Beholder.
Yes, so that looks like an Eye of the Beholder face on Toad there, and I love the sound effect when he's bouncing around. The sound effect is bound. At one point, when Hank is doing the trying to mess up with the guys cheating in the casino, he thinks to himself, "My lovely fiancée could afford it, but maybe the rest of the players can't." Again, they casually mentioned them being fiancés in the previous issue, and both Matt and I were like, wait, what? I don't think they've said that before. And I think they just start saying that and then just forget that they were saying it. Because it just seems to disappear. I guess because they're treating them like a married couple, but they're not married, then, they've got to call them fiancés because otherwise people, I don't know. And meanwhile, Wasp's costume in this issue.
Yeah, va-va-voom.
Va-va-voom. She's wearing basically a strapless bathing suit. 12-year-old me would have very much liked this issue. For those few panels. Let's see. At one point on page 15, the Black Knight refers to his lance as a mace. Which he says, "It's the Wasp. She flew against my mace, thinking I intended to use it." Which it's just they're moving very fast on these things these days. No need to go back and deal with any of that. On page 16, Jan is saying to Hank, "Your ants and my wasps have got him on the run, Hank." Have we had her controlling like wasps the same way that he controls ants?
I think that may have happened before. I think they've played with just a little bit about it, but yeah, no. Generally speaking, she doesn't usually fly into battle with an army of wasps behind her, but she does here.
She should.
Yeah, why not, man?
That would be effective.
Well, it's a basic scientific fact that if you wear antenna in your helmet, you can control the animal you're dressed as. She's not wearing a helmet, therefore she cannot control the wasps.
Okay.
Thank you for the explanation. And finally, on page 20, panel 3, one of them says, "He's swooping downward. That must be Garrett Castle below." Someone else from that, you can't see who's talking, but someone else from the vehicle says, "You're a regular Dick Tracy, ain't ya? How many castles did you ever see here in the States?" Well,
a lot.
A lot. There are a lot of abandoned castles around the New York area, apparently, as we have seen in these issues. But anyway, yeah, that was all I had to say. Just a few little observations along the way.
Yep.
Overall, George Tuska did a decent job on this issue. There are certain things that I really liked. There are certain things that I could have done without. But for the most part, I will take it over a Don Heck guest issue.
Yeah, I love Tuska. I love looking at Tuska faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the faces.
Yeah, I was actually noticing on page 20 that picture of the Black Knight right before he takes off at the end, the next to last panel, is a really nice face, even behind the mask. And he does a really good job with this, doesn't he?
And he does the thing where he's drawing like a 3-dimensional mask helmet over top of a face, and you can tell. It's subtle, but it's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's more difficult than you would think it was going to be, but he pulls it off quite nicely.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, yeah, I'm just checking my own notes here. I say, okay writing, okay art. Black Knight is a great new character. Very little progress on Magneto, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver story. He had them tied up at the beginning of the issue, and they're still tied up at the end of the issue, and he's just taking them to, as John Mulaney would say, a second location. Which is never good. So then, all right, guys. Well, I think that is the end of our discussion of January 1968. I think that there was some really good stuff in this month. There was some weaker stuff in this month, but it was overall a pretty great month. And it was great, Jeff Ryan, having you here to discuss it.
Oh yes, it was wonderful. I've never read comics like this, like a cross section, a core sample. I love to see that we're in the era of Marvel. I'm thinking of it as the do-si-do era, where you're not dancing with your partner anymore. Like Magneto is now in the Avengers, and you're seeing like Paste Pot Pete show up in Daredevil.
That's the Trapster. The Trapster.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nah, he's Paste Pot Pete.
So it shows the creativity you can come up with just by having hero meet a different hero or hero fight a different villain, and eventually you can get a really nice set of combinations. And they're still figuring out what the good combinations are. In the meantime, they have like 8 million pages to draw every week, so they'll just throw whatever their first thought is on.
Yes. Okay. Well, guys, I think that is about it. Let's go ahead and thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you so much, Jeff. Everybody run out and buy his book, Father and Son Issues, The Secret History of Spider-Man, which is just a really entertaining book, and I learned so much about Marvel history from it, and I highly recommend it. Okay, guys, thanks so much for coming out. We will see you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.